What is up, you fucking twats? It's your boy, Axel Adams here. And today we're going to do something we never did before. We're going to be doing a classic album review on probably the most infamous heavy metal album of all time, St. Anger. So on June 5th of this year, this album reached 15 years on this fucking planet. I still legit can't believe that this album is 15 years old. Like, this came out in 2003. I was 8 at the time. I'm 23 now. I feel so fucking old. It's like ridiculous. And you know, since it is the 15-year anniversary of this record, I thought it would be a good idea to do a classic album review. So I wanted to start and talk about why this album is hated, but why people love it. You know, because this is a very strange album, as you already know. It's one of the most infamous metal albums in the history of, you know, heavy metal music because it's so hated. It's loved, but it's also hated. But let's start off with why it's good and why it's bad. Here's why I think it's good. It was something different at the time. Because Metallica at that point, as you know, in the 90s with Load and Reload, you know, they kind of became more of a 90s metal band instead of, you know, being Metallica. This record, you know, St. Anger, it was so heavy. Like, you know, they were really, even though it wasn't a return to form, like, you know, like Death Magnetic and Hardwired to Self-Destruct was, it was a good starting point. You know what I'm saying? Like, they actually started playing heavy again. And even though there are no guitar solos on the entire album, you know, it goes to show what a great riff maker that James Hetfield is. So, really, really heavy kick-ass riffs. That's number one. Secondly, this is just a personal thing, too. I love that they tuned down to drop C on this record. I like down tuning. I don't know why. To me, standard tuning, it sounds too light. Lars' drumming is fucking fantastic, too. Like, if you watch the DVD for this album, where they play all the songs live in the studio, Lars is just going off. Like, I've never seen him do that much double bass in my entire life. I mean, like, it's fucking ridiculous, man, seeing him just smashing away on the drums, even though his drums don't sound, you know, the greatest on this album, but we'll get to that in a second. One last good thing that I can mention, you know, off the top of my head right now, I really love James singing on that album. Like, he puts so much passion in his voice. So people saying that this is a terrible album, I can see why people hate it, like I said, but you know, at the time, all the guys in the band were dealing with, you know, mental health issues and, you know, drug addiction and all kinds of shit, right? You know, especially if you've seen the documentary, Some Kind of Monster. Especially James, too. Like, to hear him, you know, on some of the songs, like, you know, like Mind Wolf, hearing him just scream at the top of his lungs and just hearing that passion and, you know, the energy in his voice. Like, you know, you could really tell that he had some serious shit inside him that he just needed to let out. And that's one thing I like about, you know, the music on this album is because all the guys, you know, they've gone through, you know, all kinds of drug addictions, all kinds of, you know, all kinds of bad shit, and instead of being negative and upset and, you know, egotistical, they decided to make an album, and, you know, though it might not have been the greatest thing in the world at the time, that's what they could make, and you know what? Over time, it actually holds up. It actually sounds pretty good. I personally don't believe that this album should get all the hate that it gets. It really shouldn't. On to the bad side of the album. The one thing that sticks out most is the fucking snare drum. I feel like Lars is an idiot, but a fucking genius at the same time. Like, I don't think he even knew how big of a meme that snare drum would be today. I don't think he had any thought process in doing that, but like, it sounds unique, especially for that album. I've heard people do covers of the songs off St. Anger, you know, using a real snare drum instead of, you know, the trash can one that Lars used. But like, for some reason, it sounds empty. Without that shitty sounding snare drum, whenever I hear these covers, for some reason, to me, it sounds empty for some strange reason. Even though it clearly sounds better, you know, without the trash can snare, it sounds like there's something missing. So, but I can see why people hate it because, you know, like, listening to how they sounded live on that tour, the snare drum actually sounded pretty good. Like, I could see the sound that they were going for. Like, it had more of a dry, kind of compact kind of smack, having more of a trashy kind of sound. Like, you know, I get that, and I understand that. But the way that it's mixed on the album, it has like this really fucking high-pitched bing, bing, bing. You know, it can be pretty annoying at times. So for the bad things of the album, we have the shitty sounding drums, you know, specifically the snare drum. Secondly, I feel like a lot of the songs suffer on this record because they made them too goddamn long and they made them too goddamn repetitive. Like the first 3 tracks on the album, Frantic, St. Anger, and Some Kind of Monster, all those songs would have been so much better if they were cut down at least like 2 or 3 minutes, especially with Saint Anger and Some Kind of Monster. Frantic could have been shortened to, you know, at least like 4 minutes. That song is a little bit all over the place. You know, another song that I feel that's good but suffers from this is The Invisible Kid, which I think is track number 5. You know, like some of my favorite tracks off the album that actually best represent Saint Anger are, I would say, My World, All Within My Hands. I like the Unnamed Feeling, but again, I feel like that song is a little bit too repetitive. I like the single version of it. That's the version that should have been on the album because it was shorter and, you know, it was more compact, it made more sense, it better represented the album instead of it just being repetitive, you know, using the same riffs over and over and over again, you know, even using the same verses and the same, you know, pre-choruses again and again and again, and the only change up being the breakdown, and then it just goes back to the same repetitive stuff, and then more riffs, and then it ends. Like, that's where this album suffers, and that's why I see a lot of people complaining about this album for that reason. And, you know, that's a big reason why this record is hated, because it is so redundant, and because of, you know, the shitty sounding snare drum and all this stuff. We got the shitty sounding drums, we have the repetitive nature of the songs. Now, this one I'm a little bit more, you know, in the middle. You can agree with me, you can disagree, but the guitar tone. Now, it sounds like shit, but I realized, you know, after all these years listening to that, you know, that guitar tone on that album, it sounds exactly like anger. It sounds exactly like pent-up anger, and that's what I like about it. I don't know what it is about that guitar tone. Like, it's not very good, but it sounds like, you know when you're really angry and it's just all pent up inside and you just feel so shitty and so pissed off? That's what that guitar tone sounds like, and it captures the anger of this album and the ferocity perfectly. Some hate it, and I can see why, because, you know, the guitar tone isn't very good. But at the same time, that same aggression wouldn't be achieved with a different guitar tone. So, you know, some people like it, some people don't. I mean, it's up to you. You can like it, you know, you can disagree with me, whatever, right? Personally, I like the guitar tone on that album. Here are some of my favorite breakdowns of Saint Anger.
Executioner 2, Protector, Protector, Rejector, Infector, Projector, Rejector, Infector, Injector, Defector, Rejector, Detector.
So let's go, I guess real quick, let's do a track by track. Frantic, you know, could have been better. It's got some good riffage, but a little bit more on the meh side, but still good. Saint Anger, good, too repetitive. Some Kind of Monster, I'm going to be covering that very soon. But even the version on this is pretty good. You know, you really get into it, especially, you know, in the middle section of the song. It has a nice groove to it. Dirty Window, if you ask me, is the first great song off this record. It's so fast, it's so aggressive, and it's just, like, it just keeps coming at you throughout the entire song. And that's one thing I like about it. Invisible Kid, good song, but again, too repetitive. But even then, I'll still have it, you know, playing. You know, even if I'm not directly focusing on it, I'll just have, you know, that song playing when I'm listening to this album sometimes. and I'll just be rocking out, you know, when my favorite parts come on and all that stuff. But anyways, not a bad song. My World, favorite song off the fucking album. This represents everything that Saint Anger should have been, from the way that the songs were structured to how heavy it was. Just everything about that song is just fucking perfect, and it's the best song on the album if you ask me. Another very strong song to follow that song is Shoot Me Again, which is track number 7. That's another very, very kick-ass, in-your-face, aggressive, nasty, angry, pissed off song that really talks about having to bite your tongue and trying not to shoot back when you know you really want to. Another great song that really represents this album well. Sweet Amber is fantastic as well. The Unnamed Feeling, again, I prefer the single version as opposed to, you know, what was on the CD. Purify, this song took me a really long time to get into, but I only started really listening to it over the last couple years and stuff because I fucking hated the chorus. But like, it's just so, again, this is another great song that represents this album because it was very fast-paced. You know, even if the song is a little repetitive, like, you know, all the other ones on this list, at least it hits you in all the right spots for the most part. There's so many fantastic breakdowns on this one, especially the middle part of the song. That's just fucking phenomenal. And then All Within My Hands, again, great song, a little bit too repetitive, but still fantastic in its own right. So I would give this album, at the very, very least, a 6 out of 10. Maybe even a 6.5 on a good day. Definitely not something to completely disregard, but definitely something to maybe take a listen to. You know, maybe smoke some weed, you know, have a couple drinks, take a couple songs on there that you maybe liked before, maybe that you weren't too crazy about, and just rediscover this album, because you know what, it's not that bad. I see why people fucking hate this album, and I can see why people especially hated this album when it came out, but it's not anywhere near as bad as people say it is. Like, people are saying, like, oh, this is the worst fucking album ever created. It's like, bitch, have you listened to Lulu? Enough said. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this little video. I'll probably do more of these little CD reviews, you know, once in a blue moon. I'll see how I'm feeling. I'm working on new music, as I said. I'm doing a cover right now for Into the Void by Black Sabbath, and that's coming along great, along with a couple more music videos. Everything's coming together fantastic. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and, you know, have a great day. Bye-bye!